SCP-001, the Spiral Path. I absolutely love SCP-001 proposals. This one's by SCP Explained. Make sure to subscribe to him. Subscribe to me if you like reaction videos. And let's get into this one.
What is the most dangerous creature in the universe? Here on planet Earth, there are creatures that have hardly evolved since prehistoric eras, like sharks, crocodiles, and snakes. Perfect biological killing machines.
Right.
But then again, the animal kingdom is nothing when compared to the menagerie of creatures contained by the SCP Foundation.
That's right.
So
682 is pretty low in the power scale
compared
dangerous
to some of this
creature
in the universe? Is it SCP-682, the damage-regenerating reptile with a hatred for all other forms of life? Or is it the Scarlet King? Or is the Broken God more deserving of that title?
Right.
Maybe the answer still lies elsewhere. And thankfully, there is one SCP in the Foundation's archives that might not be the most dangerous itself, but teaches us a very important lesson about what the most dangerous entity truly is.
The Spiral Path.
This is the story of SCP-001, the Spiral Path.
All right.
An important distinction
Tell us about it
before we go any further. SCP-001 doesn't refer to a single creature, object, or entity, but rather a collection of various anomalies contained by the SCP Foundation. It is unclear why there are multiple files collected under the shared designation of SCP-001. Some believe these anomalies are some of the earliest ever contained by the Foundation, encountered before they introduced their current numbering system. There is also the theory that this is intentional misdirection, that the multiple SCP-001 files are an attempt by the Foundation to conceal secret information about the true SCP-001. Anomalies sharing the name SCP-001 include the infamous aforementioned Scarlet King, a powerful eldritch being intent on ending all creation. Another anomalous being with similar levels of destructive power is the Gate Guardian, believed to be an angel standing at the entrance to the Garden of Eden. It too goes by the name SCP-001. But for the purposes of this video, we will be using SCP-001 to refer to something otherwise codenamed the Spiral Path. And while it is not a creature in and of itself, SCP-001 does yield one answer to that important question. What is the most dangerous creature in the universe?
Tell us, please.
On paper, SCP-001 does not seem to be much, and it certainly doesn't appear to be any sort of threat. As its nickname suggests, the Spiral Path is exactly that, located deep in a wooded area known only as Site-0. SCP-001 is a gravel path in the shape of a spiral. Your first thought at hearing that might be, what could be so important about a path? If someone were to find themselves walking along the Spiral Path, traveling clockwise around the gravel, then they will find that nothing happens. It's just a normal path with slight inclines and declines as one traverses it. If one should walk counterclockwise around it though, then they will begin to experience SCP-001's first anomalous effect. The path will begin to feel as if it is sloping uphill, getting steeper and steeper. When they reach the beginning of the path again, a person will still feel as if they are walking endlessly uphill. All the while, the path itself does not move or change in form or altitude. To put it simply, walking one way around SCP-001 causes it to behave normally. Walking the other, the path does not adhere to the laws of physics. You may well be thinking, is that all? On a surface level, the Spiral Path does appear to just be an unmoving, low-threat anomaly. While it may not be as aggressive or malicious as some of the SCP Foundation's rogues gallery, it is still a spatial anomaly that defies all Euclidean geometry. That might sound like small potatoes when compared to everything the SCP Foundation has faced over the years. But bear in mind, if the Spiral Path is truly SCP-001, and the very first anomaly that the Foundation learned of, then a simple path that ignores the ordinary laws of space and time would have been a major discovery in the organization's earliest days. But why would they still keep the Spiral Path so heavily guarded all these years later? SCP-001 is kept behind a maximum security fence that has been constructed all the way around the perimeter of Site-0. At all times, the SCP Foundation keeps no less than 5 fully armed members of security personnel on site to keep watch over the Spiral Path, and to make sure that no one approaches it who isn't authorized
Get out of here.
There is a small metal plaque too, bearing an unknown inscription on it. Special containment procedures for SCP-001 state that this plaque is to be kept in good condition, and it should be immediately reported if it shows any signs of damage. A Foundation physics laboratory is also located nearby, where research staff tirelessly conducts scientific tests on SCP-001 and its anomalous properties.
So much foreshadowing.
So there's definitely something more to the spiral path than a simple stroll around it would tell you. Attached to SCP-001's file is an item referred to as Document 001-05, written by high-ranking Foundation researcher Dr. Everett Mann. Any prospective or new members of the O5 Council are required to read this document, and from the events it details, learn the truth. Not just about the truth of the spiral path, but the truth about the SCP Foundation itself. Dr. Mann begins this file by explaining to the reader that either he or one of the original founders of the SCP Foundation must have died, and the person reading has been appointed as a successor. Whether his death was caused by an SCP, an operative from another anomalous organization like the Global Occult Coalition, or getting a little close to the flame. Mann states that old age definitely wouldn't be what killed him. He writes, "We took care of that, didn't we?" Whether he means that he and the rest of the old guard are somehow immortal, or just working for the Foundation would likely mean dying before reaching old age, is unclear. But Dr. Mann's next statement is one that changes the very way we view the Foundation and its entire purpose. We've never discovered an SCP in the entire history of the Foundation. According to Document 001-05, every instance of an anomalous creature, entity, or object is entirely staged. He then goes on to describe Aaron Siegel, a gifted physicist that Dr. Mann regarded very highly. I believe his name would be there with Edison, Einstein, and Hawking. I knew him very well. He was, and may still be, my brother. The pair evidently shared a close personal connection, and it was Siegel who first discovered SCP-001. During a hike, Aaron stumbled upon the spiral path, noticing that no matter how far uphill he seemed to travel, his elevation never once changed, only for him to end up back at the start of the path. Being a physicist, Siegel quickly realized how this unassuming gravel path did not conform to Euclidean geometry, that it did not fit within the laws of nature. Constructing a small wooden shack nearby, Aaron Siegel began to study the properties of the spiral path. Equation after equation, hours spent examining every variable and experimenting with his findings, until something unforeseen happened. Aaron created an SCP, a key that had the innate ability to open any lock. Nowadays, that same key is still in the Foundation's possession,
005.
under the designation SCP-005.
Never covered that one.
Slowly, Aaron began to bring others into the fold, trusted colleagues and other scientific minds. Among them was, of course, Dr. Everett Mann, who was still a medical student at Harvard at the time. This brain trust, a think tank composed of only a select few, they were the very beginning, the ones who founded the SCP Foundation. Using their own fortunes and funding from Thomas Carter, the group continued with Siegel's experiments. The scientists had high hopes for what they could achieve, planning to change the world for the better, feeding the hungry, providing shelter to the homeless, curing the sick, and even cheating death itself. In the beginning, this proto-foundation started small. Their goals were noble, but could not realistically be achieved overnight. They tried to make items that would improve life, such as a Fountain of Youth, a partially sentient Civil War statue,
they made the Fountain of
and an
Youth too.
extremely
That's
bouncy
crazy.
ball. Better known to the Foundation today as SCP-006, SCP-011, and SCP-018 respectively.
I never heard of the
But then this
ball.
new Foundation began to grow, with more organization and a secret facility. And with that expansion came emboldened scientists, eager to change the world. The group began working on human test subjects, volunteers and drifters that soon became SCPs. The spiral path was not just a break in the fabric of reality. In a metaphorical sense, it referred to the spiraling path the newly formed Foundation itself was on. Every discovery they made led to another, and that to another still, until things started to go wrong. During the continuing experiments, Dr. Mann created SCP-008, a deadly zombie plague capable of infecting anyone with 100% lethality. More and more of the founders were so invested in their projects that the results were often nightmarish.
Yeah,
the Foundation
like the old
needed
man.
help. That came when Thomas Carter showed their work to the military in exchange for additional funding and personnel.
Wow.
The SCP Foundation expanded
Seems
even further,
dangerous.
becoming an international organization and bringing in new researchers and staff. In some instances, the founders would arrange for the anomalies they had created to be found by the new recruits. Other times they would fabricate reports, changing the details of how things like SCP-008 or the Fountain of Youth were first discovered.
Right.
Anything the founders said was simply now a fact. No one questioned them. Even then, problems still arose. Founding members broke away from the SCP Foundation, some even creating splinter groups that would later become infamous groups of interest. The Foundation's directive shifted, now focusing on the containment of anomalies, as yet more were created through darker means. SCP-231 was taken from an orphanage. Dr. Mann himself vivisected a small boy, who then became SCP-610, the flesh that hates. And there were more still. Abel, the Blood Pond, and even the hard-to-destroy reptile. All of them were the creation of the Foundation itself. But through it all, Dr. Mann wrote, he was never afraid of the path that the Foundation was on. He was never even afraid of all the monsters and abominations that he and the other founders had secretly created by studying SCP-001. What truly scared him were the anomalies the Foundation didn't create. There were some that would just appear in containment one day, even if they hadn't been there before. They would seem like they had always been there. Dr. Mann closes document 001-05 with the realization that he and the other founders simply were not in control anymore. The tale of Dr. Mann and the other founders of the SCP Foundation is one of noble intentions that ultimately became corrupted. At first, the founders created SCPs that they hoped would benefit humanity, but then came the mistakes, the accidents, the monsters, like SCP-008, SCP-610, and even SCP-682. The Foundation lied to the governments and militaries of the world, claiming they found these SCPs, not created them. And in return, they received funding and staff to expand, allowing the SCP Foundation to grow, to become what it is corruption, today. Dr. Mann posits that at this point, the Foundation was no longer in control, but perhaps they never were. And all of this stems back from one singular starting point, the spiral path. It might be impossible to truly know how many anomalies and SCPs the Foundation created just from researching SCP-001. Only the O5 Council will ever know exactly how many of the Founders' discoveries they themselves were responsible for. And now you know the answer to what's the most dangerous creature in the universe. It's regular people dabbling with something they could never hope to fully understand.
That makes a lot of sense,
starting with the hope to change the world,
people,
only to create monsters that might one day destroy it. Now go check out SCP.
That was a really, really cool take, man. Humans are the most dangerous creatures in the world. Makes a lot of sense, don't you think? There are a lot of bad mojo out there, man. There's a lot of bad mojo. People have done some very, very horrific things over time, you know. Gosh, it's far-fetched as far as a story like this, but it's a very, very interesting take. This was a really, really good one, man. SCP Explained, guys. Make sure to subscribe to him. Subscribe to me if you like reaction videos too. Thanks so much for watching. As always, this is Zueljin signing off. We'll see you next time.